Have you ever felt like you were standing on the edge between life and death? Somewhere in a dimension that words can't quite reach, yet everything about it feels deeply real? What truly happens when we step that close to the boundary? Only to be pulled back by something unseen yet unmistakably present? This isn't just a story about someone who nearly drowned or a fleeting moment of fear. This is about that exact moment when the world we know fades into nothing. And we come face to face with something far beyond the limits of life and death. Picture yourself in a moment where everything is still and frozen in time. Then suddenly a blinding white light appears. But this isn't any ordinary light. It forms a tunnel of brilliance, as if calling you to step further in. In mere seconds, everything changes. No sound, no fear. Just an overwhelming sense of peace. But then, with an unexpected force, your body is thrown back. What really happened? Was it just a trick of the mind? Or a real encounter with the edge of existence? This story is a journey that may never be fully explained. A life-altering experience that just might shift the way you see what lies beyond our final breath. How do I know what was there? Who pulled me back from the edge of death? And did I truly return to this world? Or did a part of me remain in that place beyond words? Join me on this journey. And let the questions linger in your mind. Because some things in this world can't be explained by logic, only felt by the heart. Not all children begin their lives with an ordinary story. Some are born amidst laughter and tears of joy, while others seem to carry with them a sign, an omen that cannot be explained by logic, yet is felt deeply in the heart. Since I was young, there has always been a feeling I couldn't quite explain, as if something was always with me. Not a shadow, a nightmare, but rather a soft whisper from an unseen world. A world that is foreign, silent, and for some reason feels strangely familiar, like a home I've never lived in, but always yearned for. Some call it intuition. Others might find it odd. But for me, there's only one word that truly describes it. Mystery. A mystery that slowly unfolds on a quiet evening. An evening that quietly becomes a doorway to the strangest yet most real experience of my life. An experience that leaves me wondering, have I ever truly died? I was born into a simple family in a small town that wasn't well known. According to my parents, my birth was the answer to their long prayers for a son. However, my arrival wasn't normal. My mother carried me for 13 months, a period that seems impossible by medical standards. When I was born, I often got sick, and was even in critical condition, almost losing my life. When I was only 1 year old, my father became seriously ill. His illness took away most of his strength, leaving him weak and unable to move as he used to. People said the disease came quickly, slowly attacking his body and clouding his mind. As a young child, I was often seen talking and playing by myself. I would talk to an invisible figure, as if someone was always around me, even though I was the only one who could see them. This scared my parents, who were already going through a tough time. As my father's health declined, our home was filled with worry, and my mother became helpless. Our family, which wasn't wealthy to begin with, was becoming more fragile. My father, who used to protect us, was now unable to do anything except lie in bed. My mother, exhausted from taking care of him, couldn't give me her full attention. I felt lonely and out of place, with no one to protect me from the harsh world. I often felt like I had to face everything alone, lost in my own solitude. In their confusion, my parents took me to a wise person. They hoped this would help me get rid of what they thought was an invisible problem, something they didn't understand. The wise person suggested that I be closed off, so that what I saw and felt would disappear, like the imaginary things children are supposed to stop seeing. I was taught to believe that the world I saw, full of invisible figures and strange lights, was just an illusion. The more I grew up with the idea that what I saw wasn't real, the more I felt separated from the world around me. At a very young age, I felt trapped between two worlds. One where adults told me to ignore what I was feeling, and another where I sensed something deeper and bigger, something beyond what others around me could understand. But I couldn't explain it, because I didn't have the words to do so. At school, I felt more and more isolated. My classmates thought I was different, even strange. They didn't invite me to play. I spent a lot of time alone, in my own world. Every day, I felt unfairly treated, mocked, and avoided simply because I thought differently. I never felt accepted. The adults' words echoed in my head. What you see isn't real. But how could they understand if they'd never experienced it? At home, my grandmother was the only one who was always there for me. She was the only person who listened to my stories, even though she couldn't explain what I was going through. In the quiet, heavy house, my grandmother was the only place where I could find peace. Even though we didn't have much, she made me feel safe. Something I really needed. But even she couldn't always protect me from the doubts surrounding my life. My childhood was filled with uncertainty. Without the protection I needed, I learned to deal with everything on my own. The world seemed so big and full of questions without answers. What was really happening to my family? Why did I always feel different? Why did I have to live with this feeling that something was hidden? Something I couldn't tell anyone about. That's when I started to realize that my life would always be full of mysteries, things that couldn't be explained with words. A long journey that led me to discover the truth about a world much bigger than what the ordinary eye could see. And even though I felt alone, I also felt like something greater was always watching over me. Always there, even if I couldn't see it. When I was 9 years old, I went on vacation to my cousin's house in another town. Behind his house, there was a big river that became a favorite spot for the locals to bathe and play in the water. Back then, the river was a gathering place, filled with laughter and joy, especially for the children who saw the riverbank as their adventure playground. I saw the adults soaking in the water, while the kids my age ran, jumped, and laughed by the riverbank. But I could only sit quietly and watch because I couldn't swim. The river felt very deep, wide, and for some reason, it seemed to hide something unseen. As I was lost in thought, my cousin came and stood next to me. He invited me to jump in. He reassured me that the river was shallow and safe, and he would jump first to show that everything was fine. Without waiting for my response, he leapt into the water and surfaced with the water only up to his chest. He kept calling me to join him. I looked over at my mother, who was soaking in the river, seeking her approval through a glance. She smiled back at me, and without hesitation, I ran and jumped into the water. The water greeted me with warmth. At first, I felt fine, but then something strange happened. A light appeared. Not just an ordinary flash, but a bright white light that enveloped my entire vision. The light wasn't blinding despite its intensity. It seemed as though it had a life of its own. It formed a long tunnel, like an endless passageway suspended between two worlds. My body began to move, but I didn't feel like I was moving it. It was as if an invisible force was gently pulling me, something undeniable. I didn't resist because I didn't feel afraid. What I felt instead was peace. My body felt light, as if all the weight of the world had vanished. At that moment, I realized this wasn't just a dream. This was a journey that crossed boundaries. When I stepped further into that corridor, everything around me disappeared. There was no river water, no loud noises, and even my panting body vanished. All that remained was silence, but not the frightening kind of silence. This was a full, alive stillness. A silence that healed. I couldn't fully explain what I felt, because there were no words that could accurately describe it. The peace that enveloped me was not the kind of calm I had ever experienced in this world. It felt like coming home, even though I didn't know where to. There was something, whether someone or something, that seemed to be calling me. Not with sound, but with feeling. The call was not forceful, yet it was incredibly strong. It was as if a part of me deeply recognized that call, as if I had come from that place. Like that place was my true home. Time seemed to stop. I didn't know how long I had been floating in that corridor. No seconds, no minutes. All that was present was the awareness that I was merging with something far greater than myself, much wiser and far more loving. Suddenly, in the middle of the peace that enveloped my soul, another force emerged from the center of the corridor. It wasn't a harsh push, but more like a definite decision, a gentle yet undeniable rejection, as if there was a sign that said, "Not yet." My body jolted. The light corridor began to shrink, like a turned-off TV screen, narrowing into a point, and then disappearing. In an instant, everything returned. The sound of water, the coldness, the weight of my body, and the sharp sense of separation from the peace I had just experienced. I realized I was still in my mortal body, still in this world. When I opened my eyes at the riverbank, the only question that crossed my mind was, what just happened? Who called me? And why did I have to return? I felt a hand pulling me to the surface of the river. My ears were ringing loudly, like an empty sound coming from an endless depth. My head felt heavy, spinning, like I wanted to vomit or fall back into the darkness. My breath stopped, as if my lungs had forgotten how to work. Slowly, very slowly, the sound of water began to be heard. Faint, like a whisper from two worlds pulling me. Then the sound grew stronger, the trickle that slapped against reality. But it wasn't just water. There were cries, there were screams, but everything felt distant, like an echo from another world. I opened my eyes. The light felt strange, too bright, but different from the light before, the light that had brought me an indescribable peace. This was the light of the world. Cold, noisy, real, but something was off. I could still feel the peace from before, lingering like the residue of a deep dream. And what confused me more, the smell of the river water, the sound of people, the touch of sand on my skin. Everything felt alien, as if I had gone too far and returned not as the same person. I wanted to ask who pulled me, who held my hand as I fell into that tunnel of light, but my mouth was shut. What remained was only a feeling, as if I had just witnessed something that shouldn't be seen. But strangely, amid the chaos around me, I wasn't afraid. In fact, I felt a longing, wanting to go back to that light. I came to when my body was being embraced and sat down on the riverbank. Still confused, I heard my cousin calling my name while shaking my body. He said I had drowned and asked why I jumped into the river, even though I couldn't swim. I was confused, because I remembered that it was he who invited me to jump and entered the water first. He seemed surprised. He said he had just arrived after hearing people scream, because before that, he had been downstream with his friends, bathing dogs. I wondered in my mind who pulled me out of the water. My cousin said he saw his father, my uncle, who saved me and left without saying a word. But shortly after, my uncle, aunt, and mother came running from the direction of the house. When they asked what happened, my cousin explained that I had almost drowned, and that it was my uncle who saved me. But my uncle immediately denied it. He said he had just come out of the house after the children told him that someone had drowned in the river. My cousin and I exchanged looks in silence. My confusion grew. My cousin's face showed the same surprise. We both stood still, confused, trying to process what had just happened. Time seemed to stop. The world spun slowly, but everything felt blurry. How could I drown and survive like that? What really happened there? One question kept spinning in my mind. Who really pulled me out of the water? Who did I see in the water? That figure, was it just an illusion? Or maybe someone from another world? Every detail about that figure felt too real, too alive to be just imagination. So clear in my memory, and even now, I still feel its presence. Whether it's just a feeling or something more than that. And who did my cousin see who saved me? He was sure someone pulled me out, but why didn't anyone else see it? Why could only my cousin see it? And why can't I remember anything about that event after I woke up? Something that can't be explained, something that can never truly be understood. To this day, that event remains a mystery in my life.
There's no definite explanation. Everything that happened around me by that river felt disconnected from logic and reality. I only know one thing, that there is something bigger, something broader, working beyond our control. And even though I search for answers, the more questions arise, the more mysteries hang without end. Who truly saved me?